Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 2017 North American Challenger Series Summer Split Playoffs. I am Optimus Tom Sirifoss, and keeping me honest for 2 days in a row is Mr. Mark Zimmerman.
That's what people know me for, right, Tom? Honesty.
That's probably not your best quality, but it's one of your qualities.
It's on there, right? Somewhere on the list.
Yeah, if you had like a character sheet, like I would put it on there at the bottom somewhere. But
anywhere.
As we gear up for our second semifinal match, let's take a quick look at the bracket. Yesterday, First Seed United claimed victory over Big God's Jackals and will advance into our finals. And tonight, we'll see the conclusion of the bottom half of the bracket with second place finishers Gold Coin United taking on Tempo Storm. And one aspect of the playoffs that we talked about yesterday was, of course, the matches are now best of 5. But that did not stop United from taking a quick 3-0 sweep over Big God's Jackals.
I mean, it totaled less than 90 minutes of game time throughout the entire series. Obviously, that makes United kind of seem like the team to beat now in the playoffs. But what was especially impressive about this was the fact that they were able to do it without necessarily snowballing from minute 1 or something like that. There were a number of games. I think the second and third game is around even going to 15 minutes, maybe even some small advantages for Big God Jackals at points. But despite that, United, as soon as they got a lead, were able to explode the game open and close it out sub 30 minutes.
Yeah, we saw them utilizing Baron extremely well, and we saw them utilizing some very interesting kinds of team compositions because yesterday was our first chance we got to see 7.14. We saw some full patch changes in effect last night.
Yep, and the two big highlights, of course, were the Dustblade Kha'Zix going for lethality and Cho'Gath. Dandy was able to use Kha'Zix to snowball, good matchups early on, got in the enemy face, and then built that Dustblade. Cho'Gath got snowballed a little bit by the help of Dandy, but it was obviously a very strong pick. It has great sustain. It was in some against some range matchups with the Doran's shield and the pass to be able to live through it. And FLICKR, the one who was playing it last night, was talking about how he thought Cho'Gath might already be in a decent spot, and that's before the 7.14 changes came in and kind of gave him that little buff on his E. So with the ultimate change and a couple other things, a lot of people were saying that Cho'Gath was pretty good, and he looked very strong last night.
Yeah, and we also saw earlier today in the EULCS, it was picked in the jungle, so we potentially could see Cho'Gath being one of those first pick or first ban priorities. But just like last night, we have another rematch of our spring semifinals on our hands in tonight's matchup with Gold Coin United taking on Tempo Storm. However, unlike yesterday's series, we can expect this match to be much closer as these teams have been neck and neck all split. They went 1-1 against each other to finish out the split, just one match apart.
And that one match difference is off of Gold Coin United's victory over E-United last week, and they're the only squad to have beaten that first place team. Fly has proven to be a solid replacement for Phoenix in the mid lane, trading some of that raw mid lane prowess for a broader array of styles that Fly is able to play. Similarly, Rikara has been holding up on his own, putting up really big numbers down there in the bot lane, and this is his first postseason appearance for the Challenger Series. He did play with GCU last split, but when it came time for the playoffs, he was subbed out for MASH.
Yeah, and a little bit perplexing. You saw on screen, he was pretty much first place in every single category we track for the ADCs in the basically lane phase and his overall KDA. But as well as Gold Coin United has been playing, this match is going to really come down to really who performs better and shows up for today. Tempo Storm has looked pretty strong all split, and the only team they've dropped matches to is E-United twice and Gold Coin United once.
Yeah, and just like GCU, Tempo Storm replaced their mid laner to great success this split. Selfie has given the squad a really strong pillar around the mid lane, giving them a lot of breathing room because they have fallen behind sometimes down the bot lane. Something we saw as recently as last week with Delta Fox. Revan got caught out repeatedly on Caitlyn, which may have been a factor in why they're choosing to start Freeze this series, a little bit more known for that Caitlyn play being lane dominant.
Right, and you're already talking about who's going to be in the bot lane, so why don't we not delay any longer and get into the starting lineups. Loading on the blue side for game number 1, it's going to be Gold Coin United. In the top lane is Solo, jungle Santorin, mid lane Fly, bot side of the map Rikara, and his support, how could we forget MadLife?
And over on the red side, we've got Tempo Storm in the top lane, Quas, jungle Wiggily, mid lane Selfie, getting the start Freeze, and of course, down in the bot side, supporting him, Sheep.
So both of these teams coming into this one, pretty neck and neck. Tempo Storm really started out the Challenger Series split extremely strong, going neck and neck, basically tied with United for first place the entirety of the time they were basically, until they faced off against them, they wound up losing that first matchup. Whereas Gold Coin United has kind of done the same thing that we saw from them last split. They started off slow and steady, but now they're really picking up the momentum.
Yeah, we talk about the differences between Fly and Phoenix a little bit. I think early on in the split, some people were saying that, oh man, it might not look like this is working out as well for them, given the fact that they started slow again and felt like they kind of took a step back from what we saw during the promotion tournament. But all that said, they have ramped up once again and seem to have overtaken Tempo Storm, given the fact that they were able to beat E-United last week, like we were saying.
Yeah, and we said that Fly brings a multitude of styles to Gold Coin United, whereas Phoenix was who's like the quintessential hard carry mid laner. We saw his share stats were always really high, but he also performed very well in these high pressure situations. His LeBlanc was very, very good. Basically any sort of late game carry was the way that Phoenix was going to be able to play. Fly's been able to play things like the Galio. He's played the Orianna, but he's also got things like LeBlanc in store. So as we move into picks and bans for game number 1, we can see some pretty interesting things going into 7-14 for these two NACS teams.
Yep, and that's the big thing. We're talking about all lethality changes. We didn't touch on everything we saw last night. We saw Alistar got a mini buff in 7-14. Not likely, I thought, to see play. It didn't seem like that big of a buff, but Zazla used them all 3 games. We saw MF down in the bot lane. We're talking about Jhin and Varus coming back. For some reason, we see MF instead. Jace, another champion that we saw, this time banned out by Gold Coin United, along with that Blitzcrank. As much as you have MadLife and you think, oh my god, the hook god, we got to put it on MadLife. Sheep does play those exact same champions as well, and I'd say MadLife looks more effective off the playmaking supports than Sheep does, respectively. So I can understand Gold Coin United, even though they're pinching the same pools, it's still a pretty viable strategy.
Yeah, and of course, Tempo Storm going to have to ban away the Zac. That one, not necessarily as touched, but still extremely strong. We do see the Cho'Gath being banned away. That one we heard from FLICKR last night. You said before, very strong pick on the top side. Players can think they can be flexed basically into 3 different positions, with the old mid lane Cho'Gath potentially still being viable. And now the fact that his E slows in addition to scaling with the health damage, there's a lot of chase down potential that he just didn't used to have.
And surprisingly, a Zed ban comes in last for Gold Coin United. I can understand maybe a little bit of Selfie's ability to take over the game by himself with the lethality buffs and the Zed champion, but I would be amazed if Tempo Storm took that one in the first round of ban phase. So this kind of feels like GCU doesn't really have a ban that they necessarily really want to force on the Tempo Storm. Maybe they don't want to ban out the Elise because they want to first pick it for Santorin. Who exactly knows? So instead, they're going for a completely targeted ban onto Selfie, even if it does look a little surprising in the first ban phase.
Leaves a little bit open as the Galio will be banned away. So 3 tanks banned away by Tempo Storm. They don't want the tank meta coming into full effect here. But as you mentioned, there's still a lot of high priority pickups. Caitlyn has been left untouched. You saw a slight attack speed scaling nerf, but we did see her still highly prioritized in this series last night. Elise is the champion that I really think of being one of the more stronger champions we normally see, but it will wind up being the Caitlyn being picked up for Rikara.
And you mentioned the tank meta. I don't want to see that. Well, we saw a lot of that out of United last night. They pretty much ran 3 tanks every time around. One in the top lane, jungle, or mid sometimes, because they did play the Galio mid one time, and then they ran Alistar every single time. So they were always very, very beefy, and it was very difficult for the side of Big God's Jackals to get through that front line, because even when they were ahead, you have to chew through so much health before you actually start racking up those kills. It becomes very difficult in the mid game to win fights. We'll have to see if that actually becomes a whole meta thing, or if that's really just a Zazla and Alistar thing.
Yeah, that's true. And that we did see Big God Jackals struggling to make the kind of proactive plays from ahead or behind last night, despite having some playmaking champions. The Bard was banned away from them quite frequently. They also had Bayano on Thresh, which we're going to see Sheep taking here for Tempo Storm. And the Rek'Sai, who kind of, is a de facto tank now. You used to see Cinderhulk and Titanic Hydra, then there was a Warrior stint. We did wind up seeing Sir T using that champion to full tank effect last night.
Yes, and so you might see that again this time around. Who knows exactly, but with the recent Cinderhulk changes and buffs and all that stuff, I think you can, for the most part, expect that Cinderhulk. We do see the Alistar hover here. I'll be interested to see if they actually go for it. I do still think Braum is probably better, so the Alistar change, which is a small buff to his ultimate, increasing the amount of damage reduction that he gets at earlier ranks and things like that. It wasn't the end of the world, because the problem with Alistar right now is that his laning phase is not nearly as strong as it used to be. Back in the day, you could pick him blind, max E, just heal up. Now his E is that trample effect, and they put his heal on his passive. It's not something that you can opt into saying, we want to play this lane defensively. It just becomes much more difficult. But we do see the Maokai, another one of those tanks, probably benefiting from those Cinderhulk changes, mana regen coming in off that now. And Maokai, a pretty mana-intensive champion, has been showing up in the jungle all over the place, even as far back as 7-13.
Yeah, and we did wind up, as you mentioned there, Nori was playing it on on Team Liquid now. Yep. For a while, he's shuffled around a lot, so I get that confused in my head. I know that Jat was very specifically talking about the jungle. Maokai has a very high solo queue win rate, too, so potentially going to be going into the jungle here for GCU, whereas Tempo Storm are going to be picking up the Kalista for themselves. Freeze has been kind of known to play the Kalista in the past. He was kind of the Kalista Draven, needed to be banned away from him, but he's been on the bench for a while, so that one kind of slips through here. Comfort pick for him.
And I'm kind of smiling because of the bans. We see the Jax ban, something that's not standard at all, but Quas played it against Delta Fox in that series that we said Tempo Storm was struggling with a little bit, but he has so many wonky champions at this point. He plays his full lifesteal Jace. He has an Alawi. He's got a Swain. You really never know what you're throwing up against this guy, so it makes sense, given the fact that the top laner hasn't been picked yet, that you just throw some bans at him and hopefully force him on something a little bit more standard, but we'll have to see. Their second ban going to be LeBlanc instead.
Yeah, so they're trying to take away some of the carry potential from the other solo lane here in Selfie. But there's still a lot open in the mid lane. Syndra is still relatively untouched, very powerful champion we've seen go back and forth. The Orianna has been banned away, so the kind of safe matchup that you could pick into a lot of these blind mid lane matchups is not necessarily available. Tempo Storm taking that one away. And they are going to be hovering the Swain and locking that one in, so they're going to wind up saving the counter pick for Selfie in the mid lane, and Quas gets something that at least he is familiar with in the top lane.
Yeah, I was about to say, we had seen Swain, I think it was week 1 or week 2 out of him. Didn't see it the whole rest of the Challenger Series, and then here it is again. You just never can count it out of his champion pool. He can bust it at any point. He's known as the Swain Master. Way back in the day, playing from Venezuela on 200 ping, he was able to actually get Challenger, I believe, with it, which is just an insane thing to think about. So that's why he is so renowned for this champion.
We see the swap between Jarvan and Allow. It's most likely going to be the Jarvan pairing up with the Corki in the mid lane, something that we've seen in the NALCS rise back to the occasion ever since he's been buffed a couple of patches ago. So we're going to wind up having Fly on that one in the mid lane. It will be the Jarvan lock in here. So most likely going to be Solo taking that into the top lane, and then that solidifies the Maokai into the jungle.
Yeah, you're talking about the rise of Jarvan again. He did, of course, receive that W buff for him, and it kind of comboed him perfectly with some of the other changes that were coming in the meta at the same time, with Gargoyle Stoneplay becoming extremely strong, giving you a lot more health. It plays perfectly into his playstyle as well, because Jarvan's kind of mash all the buttons kind of playstyle, EQR on top of somebody, hit him with your passive proc, and then you just pop that Gargoyle Stoneplay because you don't need to be doing damage for the next couple seconds.
Yeah, and we are going to wind up seeing, was Hover of a Victor, but it's going to be a Karma that gets locked in by Tempo Storm, so putting a couple more eggs into the freeze basket. You know, Karma has the wave clear availability in the mid lane, but not necessarily known for being a burst or carry-centric champion. This one with more of a support kind of style.
It is very surprising to see, given the fact that we were talking up Selfie as kind of one of these mid lane pillars on the side of Tempo Storm. Now you're putting him on a champion that does not have great carry potential. Its laning phase is still relatively strong, which is one of the reasons you probably see it picked into the Corki, known as a little bit of a bully against some of those standard mage champions. But the big thing here is the fact that come late game, you can't really count on Selfie to hard carry, which is a little bit of the style we have been seeing out of Tempo Storm recently.
It's not the first time we've seen the Karma picked up for him either, although it wasn't exactly successful. The last series we saw the Karma in was the Delta Fox series, where they actually struggled against the team that wound up not being able to win an entire match in the Challenger Series. But here they're going to be going back to the Karma, as they are in the semifinals of the North American Challenger Series Summer Playoffs. Gold Coin United Tempo Storm, this is a rematch of last time. It was a 3-0 for Gold Coin United. Tempo Storm and GCU both have a new look for them, though, so this one's going to be a little bit closer.
Yeah, you have to look at Selfie, like we were saying, the big upgrade in the mid lane. He's basically been the top-performing mid laner in the entire Challenger Series by most metrics, and he's had a great champion pool while doing it. We talk about the Karma not being exactly his style, but he has shown multiple different styles. He can play the more team-centric things like the Talia and the Orianna and work with the rest of his team. Sometimes he plays the Cassiopeia, going for that hyper-scaling. And then, if he really needs to, he can be playing the Assassins as well. We saw him bust out the LeBlanc and Cassin at multiple points as well. So a really complete player overall.
You know, one of the things you mentioned at the top of the show is the fact that Tempo Storm is playing Freeze in game number 1 over Revan. And when Tempo Storm plays Freeze, they tend to heavily prioritize that bottom side of the map. And here they've done so throughout Champion Select as well. The Karma provides extra utility. Has been on Thunderlords, though, so it's going to be a little bit more oppressive during the lane phase. But they really do want to protect Freeze on that Kalista. They have basically like 2.5 damage threats, because Karma could count as kind of one. They have the Kalista, and then the Swain in the later game will be super tanky and kind of sustain himself through these fights. But they really are putting all their eggs in the freeze basket, whereas on the side for Gold Coin United, Rikara has been the best performing bot laner in the Challenger Series in the entire season.
It is surprising to see that Thunderlords on the Karma. I understand it's much better for laning phase, but come late game, Karma's best ability is, of course, her E, and especially when you empower it with her ultimate, and so it is a little bit surprising to see the Mantra Shield not going to be as effective without that Windspeaker's Blessing, the more common support Karma, even sometimes in the mid lane showing up, because when you pick Karma, generally it is for that little bit more stable laning phase, given how hard she is to bully out of there.
Right, one of the things that made the mid lane Karma a little more viable is the fact that the Athena's and Holy Grail change went through. You kind of get a little burst of AP based off your overall mana regeneration, so that made that item a little bit more viable for these mage supports, and then eventually transitioning them back in toward the mid lane here. So Selfie could potentially be looking for something like that. It will give him extra resistances against the Corki, who's kind of more 80-20 in his magic damage field as well. But we'll see if Selfie becomes kind of the wave clear bot in the later game, or if he is really going to be buffing up Freeze, as we already see on the bottom side of the map. This Caitlyn lane going in favor of the Caitlyn.
Yeah, and I think the Thresh Kalista is the lane that can actually contest this a little bit early on. The range matchup feels very bad for the Kalista in terms of straight auto attacking, but with the Thresh able to back you up, as well as some of the all-in threat that you often have, where if you hit 2 first, you know, a hook flay into Kalista hopping around can actually threaten the Caitlyn pretty hard. That's one of the things that people talk about to deal with the Caitlyn is ganking it, which is Thresh Kalista's forte. But here we see Quas early on, under a little bit of pressure, but he is the Swain master, has the wave coming into him, going to be safe under this turret, not going to be gankable for Santorin early on.
Yeah, he does wind up putting a ward down after Santorin passes by, but pings on the top side of the map. They see that Tempo Storm does know that Santorin is over on that side of the map, whereas on the opposite side, Wiggily is waiting down on the bottom side. So he's clearing out a couple of Krugs. Has not actually yet been spotted by that ward, it looks like, but Solo going to be coming around the side as well. Looks like they just want to shove that Swain in on the top side, but pings going down from Tempo Storm on the bottom side. Wiggily knows that the enemy jungler's not around there, is going to wind up utilizing that Scryer's Bloom to clear away the ward coverage on the bottom side and make that Kiki play a little bit safer. Whereas in the mid lane, it's a little bit of trades back and forth, but not really expecting a lot of kills to happen around this Corki Karma.
All right, that's why I was saying I was a little bit surprised to see the Thunderlords, because while it will help your laning phase, generally Karma shouldn't need that much help anyways. Here we see that hook on the Caitlyn.
Oh, well, they scared Rikara and MadLife back a little bit, but she lands one of those crowd control moves, and the Ignite goes down as well. The heal coming out after the healing reduction. One more auto attack won't land. The Braum passive is there. She flashing forward, trying to get the last auto attack. Can't get the flay, and first blood for Rikara.
Overall, what should have been a great all-in out of Tempo Storm ends up horribly wrong. They give up first blood as she tunnels on going for that kill. It was a bit of a misplay as Freeze did miss his Q spear to try and get that extra bit of damage once that missed. They looked like they still should have been able to get that all in, maybe a little bit early of a rend, maybe not ready for the exhaust to cut some of that damage. We'll take another look at it here. And a nice hook by Sheep to start it off onto Rikara. There you see the Q just go a little bit wide, not ready for the flay to displace the side of Rikara, and then here just barely the heal able to keep him alive. The Braum stun is actually what kind of came through there and stopped Freeze from being able to continue on, and then Sheep just not knowing when enough is enough goes under the turret.
Thinks he can get that last Flay empowered auto attack down to Caitlyn to pick up the kill, but unfortunately not going to get that one.
And it's important to note that you didn't need that kill, because just look at the CS discrepancy in the bot lane right now. Even if you didn't get that kill, Rikara's going to be forced out of lane, and he has to go back, heal up, fall down CS, and this whole time Free should be building a lead. Now, because he got that kill, even though he's going back early on, he's still able to pick up a pickaxe. Not nearly as bad as it could have been where he's forced into just a second Doran's or something of that nature. Probably would grab a call, who exactly knows, but then you're winning the laning phase, and that's a big mistake out of Tempo Storm there.
More importantly, you're winning the laning phase with a normally bully-centric lane against the Caitlyn pickup, which is used to keep yourself safe through lane phase. And you're doing it against one of the best AD carries we have in the North American Challenger split. But now MadLife going to be getting some vision control down, finds Wiggily actually in his own jungle, going to flash away, utilizes the blast cone, just barely gets out of range of that Thresh hook, and he will be A-OK.
Well played by MadLife there, doesn't lose his cool, able to have that flash up despite that all in the bot side, keeps him alive. Yeah, nice idea of the Sheep to come in through the Dragon Pit and try and get that hook, but just not quite able to get there before he gets to the blast cone.
You can see here with the vision toggled off, nobody has seen Santorin get into that brush on the bottom side. There's no vision control in the brushes here for Tempo Storm. Wiggily thinks that he's going to be able to get this and has the flash available, but now they're going to wind up finding Santorin waiting. There's TP in channel, but Freeze is already gone down. Solo's going to complete his. Quas cancels his, and Gold Coin United get another kill.
Nice answer right away by Gold Coin United. Smelling that pressure down the bot side. The first all-in attempt out of Tempo Storm didn't work. They want to take another play while Rikara was down those summoners. And they also just got MadLife's flash out, and the laning phase is pushing away, so it's very obvious that GCU is going to be out of position in a moment, and they are already out ahead of that play of Tempo Storm. Good game sense by Santorin.
Yeah, and actually they split the first tower gold between Solo, who utilizes teleport to get down there, and the Caitlyn coming out from Rikara. So they get the first tower gold, they get the first blood gold, and they get all the kills on the board so far. There will be a little bit of trade damage in the mid lane, but this is Tempo Storm trying to come back and attack the lane where they burn the summoners, but Santorin was waiting.
Yeah, like we said, the lane is not in a good spot at all. It's pushing away from Rikara and MadLife, who have no summoners. So of course GCU knows, okay, this is the most obvious lane for Tempo Storm to gank. Santorin sneaks in because that wave is pushed up, and then it's just an easy counter gank from there. really intelligent play out of GCU, already out to a 2,000 gold lead off the back of those 2 bot lane plays.
And this is Tempo Storm. So far, all the focus for them has really been around the bottom side, and that's kind of the telegraph play style that we mentioned when Freeze is in for them on the bot side of the map. They tend to play around him, and when he can't get the advantages he needs throughout the lane phase, Tempo Storm tends to not keep the tempo up. They slow things down. They wait for Freeze to get his item spikes, and they seed objectives on the map. So Gold Coin United with this Goldie might start looking around the different sides of the map. They rotated Caitlyn up to the top. There's a Mountain Dragon on the bot side, and we'll see what Tempo Storm's going to react with.
Well, they do land the hook on the MadLife to start things out. A lot of CC down there.
Yeah, Wiggily actually being able to come over the wall. The exhaust is down on him, but MadLife's going to pay with his life for that one.
Nice play out of Tempo Storm there. Both bot lanes flip up to the top side in response to the first turret going down. And then they just sit over the wall. Now Rikara too far forward again.
Oh, Wiggly's going to get the knock up there from the Umbrella. A bunch of damage coming through, but a heal's going to help him dodge. The ultimate comes out there, and Freeze is going to be able to spear through for a kill.
What is Rikara doing? Walking back up into the laning phase with no extra support or wards going down. It's so easy for Wiggily to just take that tunnel over again. Repeat gank, get the knock up, and even though he's able to dodge out on the hook, hold on, Solo.
Yeah, he
doesn't want to finish the point.
There's a package coming in from Fly as well, and they take down the Swain Master.
This game's getting pretty hectic early on. Swain extended in the long lane, not known for being particularly safe, given the lack of mobility. A good roam out of Fly. This is one of the things that we were saying. He does a little bit better than Phoenix, is get out of the laning phase and coordinate with his teammates. Solo brings the CC, Fly brings the damage.
Yeah, so, like you said, a little more bloody so far than we had expected, as Sheep was just waiting in the brush here, and it looks like Tempo Storm got the first, counter rotation after the lane swap went down.
It's just a little bit ahead. Obviously, Tempo Storm knows that the GCU bot lane is going to head up to the top side to keep pressuring with that Caitlyn, who had just grabbed her BF sword, but then Rikara gets super greedy, thinks he can just heal sidestep out of that, but Wiggily showcasing in that new Rek'Sai ultimate, able to get the extra chunk of damage in, which allows Freeze to get that cleanup kill with his Q.
Yeah, and we saw Rikara thinking that he took the tunnel down enough time, but we did see Wiggily just coming through and just knocking him up right afterwards. So Gold Coin United, well, they had about a 2,000 gold lead before. Now it's been cut down to about 1,500 gold lead. So it's not the worst thing in the world, but they've seen the advantages that seemed like they could have just transitioned out of the early game and continued to keep that lead.
And it's especially tragic given the fact that it is a Kalista, a champion that often wants to be ahead of the game. It doesn't build armor pen for a long time. It relies on getting a ton of stacks in, using attack speed and lifesteal to remain relevant with its short range. And if it ever falls behind, it's one of those champions that feels like it's doing nothing, and it just basically comes down to a utility bot with the W, Sentinels being able to scout out vision while using the ultimate to throw people around. And the fact that you've given this influx of gold back over to Freeze means he might be able to stay relevant in this game.
Yeah, and as we mentioned just earlier, Tempo Storm, when Freeze is in, they like to utilize him as the way they win the game. So giving their win condition a little bit of extra gold here from the side of Gold Coin United. However, they are going to continue to get their duo lane on the top side of the map. Nobody really wants to touch the Mountain Drake quite yet. One of the things that Gold Coin United have been known for throughout the Challenger Series is really their top-notch vision control. But Tempo Storm so far, since this rotation up to the top side, has been really good at making sure that Santorin and MadLife have been able to group up together and really establish it on the top side. As Solo on the bottom side here. Got a kill on Quas earlier, but now Quas is making him pay for it.
Solo did get the Merc Treads as his early MR buy, also gets him out of that Never Move a little bit faster, but it's still a bit of a tough lane to be in. Quas has plenty of harass. Now we see a potential dive being set up to the top side.
No, MadLife has been able to put one more down, and that's going to be the one that spots out Wiggily as he blast cones back over to his side of the map. Does have the tunnel available, though, so MadLife has to be a little bit careful. Mid lane, not all too much action going on. Selfie's been able to build up that Athene's Unholy Grail, so he has gone for that item a little early on. As Santorin to make his first appearance on the top side of the map with his duo lane in tow. So it's just going to be a hop, skip, and jump away from Freeze and Sheep to keep them alive, as Wiggily is still hovering around this top side of the map.
See a ton of vision control for Tempo Storm up in this top side. Santorin and the rest of GCU have a little bit of work to do to get some of this back. Otherwise, their bot lane will continue to be under pressure because Tempo Storm will know exactly where Santorin is and if they're safe. Now you see a little bit of tri-laning as GCU tries to get this wave under the turret. Not a fun spot to be in.
Yeah, I really want to see if Tempo Storm is going to be able to keep up this vision control, because it seems like they have a lot of this pressure because they had the first rotation top side and because they were able to pick up that kill on the duo lane up there. So we'll see if they're able to transition this vision control they have in the early game, in this lane phase, into the later stages of the game, because we just mentioned before how Gold Coin United's vision control has been one of their strengths and lets them move freely around the map in the later game and keep up that objective control. If Tempo Storm can keep contesting that, then they can wind up keeping this gold lead to about 1,000 and keep it relatively close.
One of the things that people kind of criticize GCU about last split a little bit was that they played slow in some regards, where it felt like they could have picked up the pace. And once again, despite getting that early 2 kills in the bot lane, they grabbed that turret right away. The game has mostly stalled out. Good plays out of Tempo Storm to find some more kills on the top side, of course, to slow them down. But they haven't really roamed around that much more. Fly had that one move down to the bot side, but that was just a kill because the objective was already down there. They weren't able to grab the dragon off that kill. And so once again, GCU in a slower pace game.
Yeah. If Rikara and MadLife stayed alive on the top side, things might be a little bit different, but the pace of this game has slowed down significantly. It looks like both of the dual lanes, actually, dual lane from GCU had already gone back. We see a BF sword added to the pickaxe in the inventory of Rikara, whereas now it looks like the side of Tempo Storm is going to be going back for their own pieces of the Blade of the Rune King, and Berserker's Greaves already picked up for Freeze, and Sheep actually going for a very early pair of mobility boost and motor around the map here on this playmaking Thresh.
Overall, a nice CS lead for Freeze, given the fact that that game started pretty sour for him. It's one of those things where you can kind of understand why they put Freeze into the lane against Rikara as opposed to Revan. Rikara, one of the strongest laners, like you were saying, in the NACS, and Freeze was someone who was actually very good in lane as well when he was on the right champions. And it was one of those things where they thought maybe the meta probably suited Revan a little bit better previously with some of the changes that have been coming in. Kalista came flying back into the meta, and that's something that Freeze is very competent on, as well as that Caitlyn pickup.
Very good comfort pick for Freeze. And as we mentioned before, Rikara's laning stats, he's normally +7 CS differential at 15 minutes. Right now, he's behind by about 20 or so. So he's got a little bit of work to get that stat back up. But Freeze potentially, definitely a very, very strong laner. So you can see why Tempo Storm has put him in for this matchup against another very strong laner, but also very interesting to see how he gets out of this lane phase, what happens when they have so much support kind of built around for him. Even the Swain pickup on the top side of the map has a lot of CC and a lot of abilities to slow down the enemy advance onto their backline, as now we see both of these junglers potentially, or actually both, it was a jungler and a top laner, as the Swain was one roaming down up from the top, the bottom side of the map, trying to make a play on the mid lane, but nobody really biting the bullet for that.
I do think the karma makes some sense within the comp of Tempo Storm, of course, given the fact that Swain has a lot of that life steal tanking, that stuff that Quas loves so much. The shields work well with that because it buys that tanks damage while you heal back up. It has a very nice synergy. Also speeds Swain up, a champion that sometimes feels like it's a little bit hard to get involved in the fights, as well as the fact that Kalista's a champion that's very short range. There's a lot of short range champions here on Tempo Storm, and Karma kind of empowers a lot of them. Like we were saying, though, the concern is just, is this what's best for Tempo Storm, given Selfie's own playstyle strengths, and the fact that he is such a competent carry, and he's stuck a little bit here on a more team-focused champion.
Well, the Karma then also makes a lot of sense since you have a lot of poke on the side of GCU. You have the Caitlyn, who's the quintessential long-range ADC, has the ability to sit back and throw out those built-over peacemakers, and then you pair it with the Corki, who's kind of, your quintessential poke champion. He stacks up rockets and just shoots them at you, and you take damage while you're underneath the tower. So if you shield that up, you're the ones that can get the jump on them. You potentially close the gap between you and that poke composition. But so far, so slow, as this game, around 15 minutes in, it's kind of settled down a little bit. GCU is still maintaining a meager about 1,000 gold advantage. The vision control for them, though, has stepped it up a little bit. We saw MadLife roaming around with Santorin towards the mid lane. They've established control over the Rift Herald pit. Not quite a Baron pit yet, but they have re-established control of the top side river, whereas Tempo Storm themselves have put a little bit more vision for Quas on the bot side, as he does have that long lane and is a little less safe.
As the game stalls out, I do think you have to look at GCU's comp as the better scaling comp. Three huge frontliners, with the Braum, Maokai, and J4, providing a lot of protection for the double 80 carry backline to rip people apart. You have good damage spreads, a lot of magic damage, a lot of physical damage. Caitlyn and Corki, both will become extremely potent in the late game damage-wise, and as well as hard to lock down on the side of Tempo Storm, who really don't have that much guaranteed CC.
That's true. They have a little bit on the Swain and a little bit on the Thresh, which seems to be their way to really engage on these fights.
Guaranteed CC is the big thing, because Swain has a very hard skill shot to hit with his Q in the late game when someone's running around in front of your turret and you're trying to hit them. The only person who really has anything guaranteed, you could say, is maybe the flash unburrow, and even that is a large commitment if you are going to try and force a fight with that. Whereas on the side of GCU, you got the Maokai W, you got the J4 ultimate. even Braum ultimate in a sense is relatively easy to hit in comparison.
You had at least 2 point and clicks to lock somebody down as they step out of position. You can bet that Kalista is going to be the one they try to jump on here. As you see already, Thresh almost getting stunned up by the Braum passive. Teleports have plenty coming in on the top side of the map here. As it looks like MadLife now will be worse for where Selfie gets taken out very low. Has to flash away from the Cataclysm coming out from Solo. But now Quas has joined the fray, and in that Ravenous Flock form, he's continuing to lifesteal his way back up. There's a lot of fighting going on, but nobody falls down.
Very dangerous on the side of GCU, given the fact that it's double teleport on the side of Tempo Storm. It's been a long time since the last fight, so of course all summoners are available. That the skirmish breaks out, both junglers already in position, but the double teleport Tempo Storm, making sure that GCU can't actually turn that fight in their favor. Fly was unable to get involved with that, but he was able to stay mid lane and start chunking out this turret.
Yeah, he was able to get a little bit of poke damage on Selfie before he wound up teleporting away as well. And as you mentioned, the poke damage on this tower almost picks that one up. Actually, eats a tower shot first, troubles as Selfie returns to the mid lane because of his speed boost. Tempo Storm, however, after disengaging the top fight successfully, will be able to enter the tower of their own, so that's going to even the gold right back up to even.
Very, very close game so far. That Dragon still untaken, not getting enough love, and here we see that top fight. MadLife caught a little bit out of position, but baiting for Santorin. Sheep goes in to try and counter out that engage, slow it down, and here you see both teleports being channeled, but Fly have been staying around the mid lane. Solo goes for an EQ combo onto Wiggily, one of the low health members. Selfie was very low, like you said, but GCU not actually able to get onto anybody, and we're afraid about overextending given the fact that it was a 5v4 situation for Tempo Storm.
And after GCU goes back and heals up, they just brute force down that mid lane and take that tower that Fly had poked down oh so low, completely down to 0. So now they've gotten 2 towers for themselves. They still got a Corki package, so we'll see if they try to rotate this momentum over towards the Dragon Pit as Tempo Storm are pinging down on that one, but it looks like GCU are A-okay, just go back to some normal lane assignments.
And here's where GCU needs to be a little careful. With Tempo Storm heading down to that Dragon, the ultimate is almost up off of Freeze again, so if they take this fight, the engages will be much easier for Tempo Storm because there's no flashes on Rikara, Santorin, or MadLife. So if you're able to pick out a target, it will be a pretty much guaranteed engage. So you can see here GCU not even wanting to test this objective, giving it up for free, saying we don't want to take another fight right now, we want to slow this game down again.
Yep, well, at the same time, Tempo Storm will send Wiggily to the Dragon, and the rest of the team down to this bottom lane tower. So Selfie picks up the Ardent Sensor, full support Karma mode here coming out of the mid lane. We'll see if Santorin's going to be able to lock down onto Freeze. Actually locks down to Sheep as well, who has to flash away from being under tower. Wiggly's going to get stunned up around the backside here as Fly rotates down from the mid lane as well. So Tempo Storm trying to put pressure on this bottom side tower, but GCU there to cut it off.
Good idea out of Tempo Storm to go take that Dragon and then instantly try and pressure down the bot lane. Santorin was in position to deter that aggression, but got chunked out really early on, and if Fly didn't come down to stop that turret dive, it could have gone very bad for GCU.
So GCU just in the nick of time to stop that push coming out from Tempo Storm. And Tempo Storm wanted to utilize the Mountain Dragon pretty much as soon as they got it by putting pressure down on the bottom side. But now we have some pretty big item spikes. We had Corki picking up the Trinity Force. Was not involved in that last fight, but still had that item spike for himself. Now going for potentially a Static Shiver rapid fire canning with the Zeal item. I mentioned just briefly before, Karma's now completed like the 2 quintessential supporty mid lane Karma items. Has the Ardent Sensor and the Athenian Zone Holy Grail to sustain up whoever they want from the side of Tempo Storm. We even see a Knight's Vow being completed as a first item after the Cinder Hulk, and Ninja Tabby coming out from Wiggily. So all the eggs are in the fruit basket.
I mean, similarly, Santorin grabbing a Knight's Vow as well. Just a very strong item in the current meta. Gives you everything you kind of want, as well as a bit of utility, keeping your carries safer while giving yourself a little bit of that weird sustain given the synergy between you and the person you've targeted with it.
Yeah, so I guess in a tank meta, you still kind of need some marksman or AD threats in order to keep yourself sustained up through these fights. As we saw yesterday in the United versus Big God Jackals series, some of those fights went on for quite a long time with those tanks in the front line.
Very difficult to shoot through all of that, especially if your only real damage is going to be a Kalista and a Swain. Karma will be able to throw some damage in, but you've got to imagine that the side of GCU's tanks will eventually get enough resist and health that Tempo Storm are going to have a hard time. They really don't have any % health damage. Maybe at some point Swain will grab a Leandries or something, but until then, I mean, there's not many ways of chewing through all this HP that's going to come in for GCU.
You got a Blade of the Ring Key on Kalista, but you mentioned earlier, she doesn't really build, armor penetration. She doesn't really go for a lot of those armor shredding items until she has a core build down pat. And even then, she's kind of the quintessential, I'm going to wail on the front line and lifesteal tank myself up and have my supports basically keep me alive through this fight as Tempo Storm is building for. As soon as you wind up factoring in the Bramble Vest or something into here for the likes of Solo or Santorin, or even MadLife could potentially pick up, that all of a sudden cuts that lifesteal efficiency because of the Grievous Runes passive on the Kalista. And you get yourself in a little bit of a sticky situation. You mentioned the short range composition for Tempo Storm.
Right, I mean, obviously, like you said, Kalista wants to hop around and hit Maokai, but if she ever gets too close, Maokai gets that W on her, and she's locked down for the follow-up that will come in from Solo, Rikara, and Fly. That's the nice thing about them, is that they can just kind of throw their ultimates, their poke damage at whoever the front line decides to lock down. That said, there will be a lot of opportunities for Tempo Storm. Given the fact that they have the Kalista, they'll probably have a better objective control over the course of this game. So we just got past 20 minutes in the game as we see a skirmish on the top side.
Yeah, as I said, the split push power of Fly's Corki is the fact we haven't necessarily mentioned is he and Selfie are going to be trading blows on the top side of the map. And while GCU does have the Swain with the teleport available to really match where the Jarvan or the Corki is going to go, they don't necessarily have another member. Sure, Karma has a teleport available, but Karma kind of wants to be near the Kalista and near where those fights are going to be breaking out at the basically from the get-go. Whenever Corki has a package available, whenever Corki wants to put down a tower, he has that side lane pressure as another member from GCU that Tempo Storm just doesn't have.
It's a little bit of a push and pull, though, because if you ever find yourself slightly extended without a teleport in the side lane, let's say Fly is up in the top lane, matched by Selfie, and then a fight breaks out on the bot side, Fly will not be able to get involved in that fight. So while GCU has a little bit better pushing power when they're set up in a 1-3-1, they don't necessarily have the summoners to match a team fight if it breaks out. And on the side of GCU, your comp, despite the fact that it can kind of split, is much stronger as a unit. Both unit teams really are. So you can probably expect to see some explosive team fighting. And the point I was making with the objective controls, of course, Kalista can't talk about Baron control without talking about this champion when it's in the game. With that Mountain Dragon, at some point, I'm sure Tempo Storm will look for an opportunity to set up in front of that and make GCU face check them and really run into all that engage that Tempo Storm can throw at them.
I mean, talk about Selfie being on a little bit more of a supportive style. Still a lot of ability power in this kit coming out from Karma as he chunks through half of the HP on Rikara's Caitlyn. As now Tempo Storm seems content to just kind of go back and forth with a bit of a ARAM style, while GCU are the ones to be A-okay to farm it out and wait for Fly's Corki to still push down the last outer tower on the top side. It's now 3 towers just to 1, but only about a 2,000 gold advantage to the side of GCU, and Tempo Storm might be making their move aggressively into the enemy jungle.
Getting flanked, though, we see Solo collapsing in from the bottom side. Santorin's going to drop his ultimate, but it's pretty far away.
Slow Maokai will actually still roots down on the 2 members of Tempo Storm, but Gold United are not going to follow after that one. They were even slower to that fight than the Maokai ultimate.
It did feel like Solo had an angle if he wanted to jump in there. He would have kind of been the only guy going forward, so it would have been very easy to be focused down for Tempo Storm. So I understand why Solo did not want to just jump in kind of 1v5, but as a result, Santorin's ultimate is too slow to actually get in there. Karma speed, very good against Maokai. If he's just going to throw his ultimate down a lane or area like that, one empowered E will get them all out of there.
One of the big factors of the reworked Maokai ultimate is he's really good at fighting in close quarters, but if you just run away from him, it's not going to be the best of ultimates to wind up utilizing. And they get that big cooldown out right before the Infernal Drake is going to be spawning. So Tempo Storm not wanting to give up this position on the map. They really want to get that second objective for themselves, but there's a Corki package they have to contend with.
Corki package giving them a lot of strength right now. Really good vision control in their own jungle. There is still one ward behind them in the Dragon, right behind the Dragon Pit to give a potential TP, but Quas is not on a champion that's going to have an explosive TP. So with all the vision control they already have, GCU look like they're in a good position to force down this Dragon, but Tempo Storm's going to contest.
Yeah, the Corki package uses a bit of a zoning package since that one's about to run out. Quas in the front line trying to lifesteal tank it up while Wiggily tries to get the Dragon, but it's Rikara that gets the last hit on the Maokai ultimate. Actually comes right back up. That's a very short cooldown. Locks down 4 members to the side of Tempo Storm. Wiggily kind of going vulnerable with that Rek'Sai ultimate, will be taken down by Fly on the backside. The Cataclysm splits up Tempo Storm. They got their damage on one side and the rest of the team running away on the other. This is Gold Coin United crashing down on Tempo Storm, taking the Drake and taking the fight.
There we see the strength of GCU's comp. They try and force down onto Santorin. He drops that ultimate to kind of disengage their attempt. And then as soon as that root lands on one person, Wiggily a little bit further in front than the rest of his team. Very easy to be focused down by that double marksman composition in the backline, like we said. And then as soon as Wiggly's down, Solo has more re-engaged tools. It's going to keep jumping forward into the fight. Very risky Dragon overall, but basically a 50-50. Nice that Rikara is able to secure it with the Piltover Peacemaker. And here you see disengage, Santorin drops the ultimate. Very hard to get involved. Solo up on the top side, kind of just playing a little bit of zoning duty, making sure that they can't get involved. So Wiggily is really the only person in that fight. GCU focuses him down, then they continue on to Sheep after Solo went in with his EQ combo onto Selfie. Selfie too low to help, Freeze on the wrong side of that fight, like you said, not able to continuously auto-attack. One of those champions that can be very hard to make work from behind, like we were saying. You know, Freeze isn't necessarily losing, but he's not as ahead as he would hope to be at this point, given the fact that he has 3 tanks going to be blocking him out.
Right, and the fact of the matter is that even though he's 35 CS up on his lane opponent of Rikara, Rikara now has 3 kills and an assist to his name, so we already see the Energizer build for Caitlyn almost fully online, just needs that rapid fire cannon as his last item. But he stopped and picked up an Executioner's Calling, which of course is going to cut through whatever healing Freeze is going to be getting from the rest of his team, but in addition to that, the Swain coming out from Quas.
Really big to pick that item up. Bramble Vest as well now gives Grievous wounds, but Quas can just avoid auto-attacking, and then that will never proc on him if he's being smart about it. And so Corki will not build Morel Namacon, of course. Might grab an doesn't need an Executioner's Calling, excuse me, because all the damage magic is magic damage. So really the only person who will ever be able to apply Grievous wounds in this situation is Rikara. So very smart to pick that up early on.
And so Tempo Storm now, bit on the back foot. It looked like they really wanted to try to pressure down on that Dragon area, but were zoned out by the Corki package and then eventually zoned out by Solo in that fight. Find themselves at about a 3,000 gold disadvantage, but now it's going into GCU style of play. Slow and steady. More importantly, vision control, the enemy jungle between Santorin and MadLife.
And we talked about the objective control that comes in for a Kalista team. Well, we got to talk about it for the Maokai side. Yes, Karma's great for empowering her whole team to run away from the Maokai ultimate, but if a Baron is behind that Maokai ultimate, you actually need a way through it. And that's one of the things that makes Maokai so annoying in team, competitive settings is you can start this Baron off like they're doing right now, and when Tempo Storm comes to contest, you just throw that Maokai ultimate to stop it. But already, Wiggily kind of in range to go for a steal.
And actually, GCU is burning through this one relatively quick, already down to about 4,000 HP, dropping to 3,000. We see Quas on one side, Solo actually going to zone away on the other. Santorin flashes out of the pit. They decide to try to lock down on the Quas. There's the Maokai ultimate, cutting off from their top laner. Roots up basically everybody except for Freeze on Tempo Storm, and Swain's already dead.
Probably going to need another one of those slow-mo kill cams to see how quickly Quas actually died there. There's been a lot of those where people just instantly pop. And off that kill, GCU still forcing around Baron.
Yeah, we see MadLife and Fly playing some zone control duties. The Baron, about 4,000 HP again. This is where GCU turned off a bit last time.
In there.
Wiggly's coming in for a steal. He's got 1 stack, 2 stack. All the stacks in the Braum passive. But Freeze is taking down MadLife. The Baron has gone over to the side of GCU, and Wiggily has died. Now GCU are turning on to the fight here. It's still a 4v3 situation, but they decided to just take their Baron buff and hightail it out of there.
Nice play out of GCU. A little risky on the side of them because they were trying to force that Baron down. Wiggily made it into the pit. They did a good job stopping damage onto it, but it looked like they were having a hard time killing Wiggily, who was trying to drop the Baron lower until it was in smite range. Looked like they were able to hold off long enough that Wiggily had to smite for health, and then they could kill him and then take the Baron. I need to see it exactly again to know what happened, but now Selfie, after pushing up the mid lane, caught out of position.
Maybe staying around a little bit too long as Solo cut off his escape on the backside here. Corki's going to wind up going forward. One last auto attack, empowered by that Trinity Force, takes down Selfie.
And here we see GCU getting a firm grasp of this game now. Nice call to go onto Quas right away. You see all these engaged threats. Santorin with the flash over might seem relatively aggressive, but he's able to drop that ultimate at a really nice angle to stop the rest of Tempo Storm from being able to save him. This is when they go back onto the Baron. You see them melting it down. Wiggily has to wrap back around, and then here he does get over the wall. The Rek'Sai tunnel extremely strong for that. Goes in at around 3,000 health. It gets relatively close to 1,000, but they are completely focused on killing him. He has to smite for the health, like we were saying, because otherwise he would die. And then once it drops it down lower, then you see Santorin smite come in afterwards. Really nice control and smite usage out of the GCU jungler.
Yeah, and we saw the Maokai ultimate being used to zone them away from the Baron pit in the picture-in-picture on the bottom of your screen while that replay was happening. We saw them utilizing that again to zone Tempo Storm away from their own inhibitor. So they take down the mid lane inhibitor, take down the mid lane inhibitor, and they still end up having the Baron buff on them for about 1 minute and 50 seconds. So this is looking like shades of United, where even though they were very close to Big God's Jackals, 1 Baron and then 1 push after that was all they needed to end a game. Tempo Storm got to be a little bit more together than Big God's was to defend against this.
That's what I was about to say. Is this seems to be the thing in Challenger Series, where once that Baron's on your side, you do a great job of closing games out. Rush up that mid lane after picking up Selfie. Really not great wave clearing on the side of Tempo Storm if that Karma is down, and wouldn't even be that effective against Baron minions given the magic damage reduction. So they're able to charge right up the mid lane, take that turret. We talk about the strength of really tanky team comps right now. You can just walk under that turret and say, hit me, I dare you. And if you actually get in range to auto attack them, then you just pull the trigger and engage. So a very aggressive positioned team of GCU grabbing these objectives.
A lot of teams usually have a crowd advantage as a 6-man. GCU is opting for Baron Nashor as their 6-man in this one as they take down yet another tower and are beginning to pressure this top side of the map. Tempo Storm's short-range composition that we kept talking about earlier on, we could really see the kind of pitfalls of that. Is you mentioned the lack of wave clear against these Baron buff minions coming in from the Karma ability power based champion, but also the fact that they just really don't have a safe way to clear out these minions without being poked down upon by this Corki, poked down upon by this Caitlyn, or completely grouped up for this Maokai ultimate, which once again will be used here on zoning duty. Tempo Storm might not be deterred by this one though. Quas getting a couple of auto attacks to the face. The healing debuff is on him. He has to walk away from this. And it looks like GCU are ready for the fight. Solo wants it going in, but maybe a little bit too far. Getting taken down extremely low. Tries to flash away. Will get popped by Freeze. They do wind up answering a kill onto the tower, though, and will follow up down onto Sheet. Santorin staying alive a lot longer than Solo did, but he will eventually fall as Freeze gets a double kill in the fight. Now Fly very, very low, and MadLife trying to do his best to protect his carries. Rikara and Fly, though, had to try to back away. Wiggily jumps down onto Rikara on the back line, but he's going to be able to stay alive. Takes down Wiggily. They do wind up picking up the dual lane, though. It's a 4-for-2 overall in an extended fight. Flash away from Fly, saves the ace, but Selfie's on the chase.
Don't know if he'll be able to get out of here. Might want to use any sort of, I guess it's Valkyrie available. Never mind, he's fine. Fly should be out of at this point. Selfie's still trying to get
He wants it. He's going to pull a sheep. He's going to tower dive. Oh, he's going for it. He's healthy enough. He can do this. He could go under, but Fly picks up the kill on the Selfie. That was selfish.
Yeah, that was very selfish and greedy on the side of Selfie. They just managed to get a 4-for-2, ends up trading it back a little bit, so ends up a 4-for-3. Here we get to see one of the problems with Solo's potential itemization. He drops his combo like a Jarvan likes to do. Does a good job zoning away the members of Tempo Storm from this turret, but he doesn't have a Gargoyle Stoneplate completed yet, so he can't just pop that and sit in the middle of the team and kind of tank that up. Goes down pretty quickly, and then once he's already bursted, they just focus down the next frontline member, and this is where we get to talk about the strength of Freeze when he's able to just auto-attack tanks constantly, stays healthy, gets them low, rends them, and then it's just a simple chase down from there. You see them trying to kite this out, but they have a fair amount of sticking power with the Karma being able to continually speed them up. They grab 2 more kills, and then Selfie goes on a little bit of a solo mission.
Yeah, just a little bit too far there, so we could see big factor in the fight was the fact that Freeze was left relatively untouched, able to just wail away on the front line.
And a goose egg out of Solo, not actually able to contribute at all in that fight. I gotta say, I'm a little bit surprised at the Randuin's Omen, given the fact that there's really only one auto attacker that you care about on the team. So surprised to see that. It does complete his Gargoyle Stoneplate now. Maybe some different itemization choices could have helped them out a little bit better there, but at the end of the day, it did feel like GCU had gone a little too far forward. They did grab the inhibitor turret during all of that, so didn't actually lose that much in terms of objectives. Just handed some gold over the Tempo Storm that they would have done pretty well to avoid.
Yeah, right. They still had a lot of gold coming in because of the Baron buff, and basically the fact that they took down 4 towers altogether, and then the mid lane inhibitor as well. That bottom lane tower was also under a lot of punishment, as we saw basically almost falling down to minions, but just Quas' Swain going down there to clear that one out, safe and sound. Tempo Storm, though, they kind of push back into their own base for a little bit. One of the things that we talked about Gold Point United is always strong with is their vision control. Tempo Storm doing a good job of trying to deny that so that GCU is not going to be able to just kind of rotate between the open inhibitor, which will respawn in just a couple seconds, as we heard the announcer saying that, and the top lane inhibitor, which is left completely exposed.
Tempo Storm definitely on the back foot. Hard to walk forward with their comp. The only person who's really tanky is Wiggily. You see him furthest position forward. Sheep sitting behind him with a lantern, potentially save him if he gets hit with any kind of CC. But that does mean it is difficult to get some of this vision control back, especially with Caitlyn trapped here. Solo looking for an opportunity. There's that lantern onto Wiggily to save him, but they've lost mid lane control. GCU going to charge up there for that inhibitor. Yeah,
GCU looks to set their sights on the freshly spawned inhibitor in the mid lane, but Tempo Storm will rotate around through that base gate, keep themselves A-okay in the positional race to try to defend against that inhibitor in their own base. We see Sheep hooked wide to the right on the rest of GCU, and Solo's going to have to use that flag and drag combination just to run away. Gold Coin United has the inside track to the Baron, but Tempo Storm might go wide for this still alive outer tower, and it looks like the Gold Coin United are going to pull the trigger for a fight. Wiggly's going to wind up going down. It's the first casualty. The Maokai ultimate zones away. Everybody freeze, picks up Sheep, throws him back in, but they've already lost Selfie. It's a double kill for Rikara as he picks up another one onto Sheep, and now it's going to be a double kill for Fly as they take down Quas, and they don't even need the Baron to end this game. They're going to be pushing into the base of Tempo Storm.
A nice 4-for-0 on GCU. We talk about that vision control that they had already taken care of, even though they get shoved out in the mid lane. Tempo Storm still feels like they need to check that Baron. They walk up a little bit, and then it's just a one-man focus at a time out of GCU. They take down Wiggily, they take down Selfie, they take down Quas and Sheep, and that's all she wrote.
Yeah, they'll take down the game off the back of that fight. So Gold Coin United, though things are a little bit close in the beginning stages of the game, and they might do it a little bit slower than the other Uniteds and E-United. Game number 1 is going to be going their way in this best-of-5 series against Tempo Storm. This might be shades of last Challengers semifinals past, as Gold Coin United took a 3 over Tempo Storm there and are already up 1 game.
And gotta say, the way that they won was a huge team effort for GCU. If you look at those scoreboards at the end, I'm pretty sure Fly and Rikara had all of the kills on the team. I believe it was about 15 total, while everyone else was just there supporting them. And that's what we talk about with the team comp being completely designed to be a setup tool, just be this big beefy front line, CC them one at a time and let your double AD carry backline just poke targets down. And even though Tempo Storm did have some aggression early on, it wasn't actually able to be quite converted into kills, into gold lead, into snowballing through objectives. It was always a little bit too close, and eventually GCU outscaled.
Yeah, and you mentioned during the actual game the fact that there was no guaranteed crowd control, really, aside from a flash on Burrow, which is still not 100% guaranteed coming out from the side of Tempo Storm. 8-0 on Fly's Corki, 7-1 on Rikara on the Caitlyn before they wound up fountain diving towards the end and maybe buffing some KDA stats. But things were kept relatively close until we got into that kind of big team fight phase. Even though Fly wasn't necessarily grouping up with Gold Coin United in the beginning stages of the game, once they knocked down all the outer towers and then focused on the vision control and focused on fighting over these dragons, GCU's team fight prowess really shone through.
Yeah, and I think that first Infernal fight is the one that you have to look at. 26 minutes into the game, we see a bit of a 50-50 Dragon Smite, but after it goes in the favor of GCU, Tempo Storm wants to keep walking forward. You see them chasing down the river. This Maokai ult deters the chase, locks up Wiggily, and then the front line just completely chain CCs him. Solo works on a bit of zoning duty onto the back line of Tempo Storm, forces Selfie out, and then once Wiggly's down, the front line continues to chase forward. Freeze gets split off on the left side of the fight, not really able to kind of kite this one out, hopping away all fight long. Never really got a ton of Ren stacks on a target to try and burst them down. And after that fight, they get the Infernal Dragon that makes their team fight even better after it was probably already the stronger team composition for GCU.
Yeah, not only does it make their team fight stronger, but it also makes their threat of taking another objective, whether it be the towers on the map that they eventually push down or the Baron that they were able to kind of dance around for a little while and utilize that proactive vision control between Santorin and MadLife that they were able to just kind of split up Tempo Storm and catch Quas off on the side with.
This was always one of GCU's biggest strengths. Last split's continued over this split is their vision control. They get complete vision control of Baron. Tempo Storm does know they're on it, and they try and potentially wrap around and set up a fight, but Quas gets picked off early on as they saw him up there. They very aggressively turn onto him, and then from there, they get the Baron down low. Wiggily goes in, a really good job of stopping damage on the Baron. It does get very close to being in smite range, but about 300 health away, and Wiggily was forced to go right away and stay alive with that smite. Santorin reacts to it. He sees the smite coming early, smites it to secure it, and then they're able to turn off that, get a couple more kills. And then like we said, apparently in Challenger, as soon as you get Baron, the game's supposed to be over because they took the mid and hit during the replay of the game when we were trying to break down what was happening.
Yeah, and they pushed on that mid lane inhibitor, they rotated up to the top side, and things got a little bit dicey around there as we finally got to see kind of what Tempo Storm's composition wanted to do. We saw about almost 6,500 to 7,000 damage coming out from Freeze's Kalista, able to get those rend resets and just hop his way through a team fight. But it was really Gold Coin United who, once they actually collected themselves after that Baron buff faded away, they realized they had priority on the map, specifically in the mid lane. Even though Tempo Storm was trying to hard push down that mid lane and threaten an outer tower, Gold Coin United had the inside track by the Baron, and we were able to get the jump on them in that last fight of the game.
And here you see that once again that vision control. Wiggily walks forward knowing that they have to make their way towards Baron eventually. And once again, they focus him down first, they blow him up, and then it's an easy chase down. That Maokai ultimate providing a lot of lockdown and zoning potential. They go one target at a time. They go Selfie, they go Sheep. Quas is now in Zanya's all alone. They take him down. Freeze was never able to really get in there and auto-attack multiple members of the front line. Once again, he's forced out of the fight, only one left alive, and there GCU is able to end the game.
Yeah, and we mentioned Tempo Storm's thing that when Freeze is in, they try to play around him. They try to utilize it well. They weren't able to really seal the deal with that one because Gold Coin United has started off this series with a win. But in Game 2 against Tempo Storm, it's just around the corner. Don't go anywhere. You're watching the NACS Summer Playoffs. Won't land. The Braum passive is there. Sheep flashing forward, trying to get the last auto attack. Can't get the play. Has a flash available, but now they're going to wind up finding Santorin waiting. There's TPC in channel, but Freeze is already gone down. Wiggily kind of going vulnerable with that Rek'Sai ultimate. Will be taken down by Fly on the backside. The Cataclysm splits up Tempo Storm. They got their damage on one side, and the rest of the team running away on the other. This is where GCU turned off a bit last time. Wiggly's coming in for a steal. He's got 1 stack, 2 stack, all the stacks in the Braum passive, but Freeze is taken down. Tries to flash, but will get popped by Freeze. They do wind up answering a kill onto the tower, though, and will follow up down onto Sheep. Santorin staying alive a lot longer than Solo did. Throws him back in, but they've already lost Selfie. It's a double kill for Rikara as he picks up another one onto Sheep, and now it's going to be a double kill for Fly as they take down Quas.